Welcome back to Preps Today with John Millea. This will be our usual recorded live show. Next week, we're going to rerun a special interview that John did with Chad Christensen. He'll tell you more about that later. Really looking forward to revisiting that conversation. For today, Preps Today is brought to you by the Aquarius Home Services Studio. Thanks to our longtime sponsor, Pizza Barn in Princeton. Thanks to all of our listeners, and thanks to all of our other show hosts and producers as we head in the holidays here. A lot of people have worked really hard to make TalkNorth.com roll the way it's rolling, and we do appreciate it. And, of course, none of it would matter if you didn't listen. So thank you so much for listening. John does great work on this show, and this will be a blast to recap this week. Let's start, John, with the Super Bowl of wrestling.
Yeah. Hey, Jim. I ventured down to one of my favorite places in Minnesota, Casson Manorville High School, last week on Friday night for a big wrestling duel. It was a doozy. It was the Casson Manorville Comets versus the Chatfield Gophers. This was the biggest duel match of the season. Nothing will top this through the rest of the regular season of high school wrestling here, regardless of class. These are schools in different classes, but they came in both with number one rankings. Chatfield number one in 1A, Casson Manorville number one in 2A. And last year at state, Chatfield was the 1A state team champion, and Casson Manorville was the state runner-up. A lot of great wrestlers coming back. These are two traditionally strong wrestling schools, and I was looking at the lineups, the rosters before I went down there. So on these two rosters, you had two state champions, one state runner-up, and three kids who finished fifth at state last year. And this duel was electric. It was really fun. The place was full. They've got a great gym at Casson, and they packed the place. It's a big place. I think I heard 1,500 people was the estimate. Just so great. Chatfield, the smaller school, came out on top 35-19, which was kind of a surprise that it wasn't closer than that, but they were dominant. They were ready to go. Casson at that point didn't have their full lineup. They had some kids out, but it was a big night in Casson. Down the hallway to the smaller gym at the school, there was a girls' basketball game. Casson hosted Lake City, and I went back and forth a couple times, but my main focus was on the wrestling. And if you go to John's Journal at MSHSL.org, you can read the piece I wrote about it. I saw some really interesting things, trying to point out it's not just what happens on the mat. That's kind of my theory of my job, is what else is going on. And just some really, really cool stuff. I'll mention one of them here. There's a wrestler from Casson Manorville, and Casson is Kasson. This wrestler's first name is Casson, Kasson. So I was talking to somebody down there during the match as he was on the mat, and I said, his family must have, long-standing ties to the town. They named their son after the town, and I learned, the kid wasn't born there. So I talked to Casson. Winya is his name. He wrestled at 215. A good wrestler. Chatted with him after the match, and he was born in Albert Lea. They lived in Iowa for a little bit and moved to Casson when he was in second grade. So I didn't talk to mom and dad. Maybe I would have got the full story there. But I said, so your name is Casson. You go to school in Casson. You're an athlete at Casson. Anybody ever give you the needle about that? And here's this quote. Oh, yeah, every day, every single day. Casson from Casson hears about it. But boy, wrestling fans, there were a lot of them there. I think probably were not from either school. Wrestling fans like to see great wrestling. And I've said this before, and I posted this on social media during the match after, years and years and decades of watching wrestling and wrestling fans. Nobody's more committed to their sport than wrestlers and wrestling fans. It is intense. These people know what's going on, and really a good time in Casson. So I invite anybody to go to John's Journal and read about the night at Casson Manorville.
That's right. You can read John's written work at John's Journal at MSHSL.org. And we appreciate you listening to this show. And they're not mutually exclusive. I think it's really cool to read John's. John's a great writer. It's fun to read his stuff, and it's fun to just have it be presented in a conversational form here, too, while you're driving or walking or exercising. So do both. Let's get to Mr. Football history.
Yeah, this is another thing from Southeast Minnesota. The Minnesota Football Coaches Association, they had their all-star game last Saturday at US Bank Stadium. And then Sunday, they gather the finalists for the Mr. Football Award and have a nice luncheon. This was history. The winner of the Mr. Football Award for 2024 is Cam Hungerholt from Leroy Ostrander, Lyle Pacelli. This is the 21st year that a Mr. Football has been named in Minnesota. This is the first one from a 9-player football team. And I think this was a surprise. I read a story in the Rochester Post Bulletin about Cam. He was definitely surprised when he heard his name called. Not only is he the first 9-player game to win this award, he's only the 3rd player from Class 3A or lower to be named Mr. Football. And he was dominant. He's going to play at Minnesota State, Mankato. Pretty good spot for a 9-player kid. He was quarterback, defensive back. He put up incredible numbers this year and throughout his career. He's been a 4-year starter down there. And he set a state record for all-purpose yards this year. He ran for more than 2,800 yards, threw for more than 2,000 yards, and running and passing. This kid had a hand in 70 touchdowns in a one high school football season. That's remarkable. On defense, he had 94 tackles, 10 for loss, 4 interceptions as his team reached the state semifinals. And this was really cool. I saw this on social media. So after the Mr. Football luncheon here in the Twin Cities, Cam and his family and his coaches get back home, and they had a welcome home ceremony. He was met by a fire truck. You get back to Leroy, here's a fire truck bringing you into town, and people were gathered in the school gym. I've been in that gym. It's a little gym, and I bet it was packed to just honor him. And they had banners and signs, Mr. Football, welcome home. And so congrats to Cam Hungerholt from Leroy Ostrander, Lyle Pacelli. That's a pretty remarkable award.
Good stuff. All right, we're going to get to some milestones, some notes. We're going to thank a ref, and we're going to hear about MSHSL's and John's most valuable teammate. I love those set pieces we do every week. First, tell us more, though, John, about Pizza Barn in Princeton and Jody Stay.
Yep, it's December. The pizza of the month is the chili con carne at the Pizza Barn in downtown Princeton. It starts with the Barn's homemade crust. They put Chef Shorty chili con carne on there. It's not ground beef. It's made with brisket. They throw on freshly shredded mozzarella cheddar blend, and it's baked, and then they drizzle it with sour cream and crumbled Fritos. I like the sound of that. It's good for dine-in, carry-out, delivery, take and bake all month long. And if you love chicken wild rice soup, and I do, the Pizza Barn makes a tremendous version. And this is incredible. You can buy it by the gallon. You can buy a gallon of chicken wild rice soup from the Pizza Barn. It's made from scratch with Minnesota-grown wild rice, chunks of tender white chicken, a secret blend of seasonings. This is a great idea for a big holiday gathering. Everybody likes chicken wild rice soup. Now, you need to pre-order it, so reach out to the Pizza Barn, and they'll take care of it. You can also pre-order pies for the holidays from the Pizza Barn. I like pie. They've got pumpkin, French silk, banana cream, apple. Again, pre-order from the Pizza Barn. They do so many great things. Thanks again to our friend Jody Stay and her outstanding crew at the Pizza Barn.
Thanks, Jody. We appreciate it. Again, we're coming to the Aquarius Home Services Studios. And, Pizza Barn and Princeton, Jody Stay have been supporting us for a long time. We really do appreciate it. Let's get to some milestones, John.
Yeah, this is some milestones, some notes. Let's congratulate Cambridge Isanti wrestling coach Neil Jennison on recently recording his 700th career win. That's a big number in high school wrestling. He ranks 6th all-time among Minnesota high school wrestling coaches. Girls basketball note, when Royalton defeated Holdingford last Friday, it snapped Holdingford's 36-game winning streak in the Central Minnesota Conference. That's a good streak. They had not lost a conference game since January of 2022. That's nearly 3 years. That's a good streak. Congrats to Holdingford on the streak and to Royalton for ending it. And a few years ago, I made a trip up to Roseau. I've been there many times, one of my favorite places. I wrote about a building, and it just was remarkable. It's the 75-year-old home of hockey in Roseau Memorial Arena. It's unbelievable. You walk in there on a game night. It's hard to describe. But last week, the arena was named to the National Register of Historic Places, which is certainly deserving. And if you go to John's journal, I reposted my story from a few years ago on the arena. It touches on the history. I talked to some folks who've been around forever up there. It's just a remarkable, remarkable venue for hockey.
Cool stuff. All right. Any other notes you want to get to before we get to thank a ref?
Let's thank a ref.
All right. Let's thank a ref.
Okay. The first one we're going to thank some refs in advance. This Friday, December 20th, there's going to be a special basketball game at Duluth Denfeld. It's a girls' basketball game between Hermantown and Denfeld with a 3-person officiating crew unlike any other. These three officials, total more than 150 years of officiating experience. These are Steve Olson, Jerry Uger, and Jim Urzar. All of them have been basketball officials for at least 50 years. I think Jim is at 54. I'd love to make it up there. I'm not going to make it this Friday, but I would love to be up there for that. I assume we'll see some photos of the three. So thanks to those officials and all our officials for all they do. Another officiating note, my friend Rick Grammond, a remarkable broadcaster up in Pierce, he posted a note about 2 former Pierce high school wrestlers who are now officials. He had photos of Teddy Daler and Tony Andres working as officials at the Paul Bunyan tournament in Brainerd. Way to go. We love to see high school athletes become officials. And I just like to say the Paul Bunyan wrestling tournament in Brainerd. That is so Minnesotan right there. And this is pretty cool for college football fans. If you're watching Texas and Clemson in the NCAA playoffs this weekend, keep an eye on those officials because one of them is our own Jason Nickleby, who's the coordinator of officiating services for the Minnesota State High School League. He's a Big Ten official, a great guy to have in that job to help all our high school officials in Minnesota. And he'll be on the field for the Texas Clemson game.
Wow. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Very good. Yeah.
Let's get to this week's most valuable teammates.
Yeah, this week, this weekly award from the high school league, we're going to honor Haley Olson, a senior from Frazee. Haley's busy, volleyball, basketball, softball. She provides the kind of energy that every teammate wants to be around. She's genuine. She works hard. She supports everyone. Haley is dependable and dedicates herself to help the younger kids in town. She's a great role model to the student body and the community. Congrats to Haley Olson of Frazee on being named a most valuable teammate.
Beautiful. All right. Do me a favor and tease next week's interview.
Yeah, Jim. We're going to take the week off, but we're going to replay an interview from September 19th, I believe, was when it was posted. That was, in fact, show number 300 on this
That's
podcast adventure. And our guest was Chad Christensen, the head football coach at Hancock High School. The most remarkable story I've been lucky enough to do so far this school year was the first home football game at Hancock in 2 years. The story was their field just flooded every time one drop of rain fell, and they ended up moving games at the last minute. So last season they tore it up. They tore it up, replaced. They put in irrigation and drainage. Now they have a great grass field. But last year they took the year off. They had no home games and played everything on the road. So I was there this fall for their first home game in 2 years. Just so many remarkable things that went on besides the football game. Just a night I'll never forget. And Chad was kind enough to come on and spend some time with us. So we'll replay that next week. And I'm going to listen to that myself because it was really fun.
Yes, everyone should. It was a great show, and we kind of like doing that during the holidays, doing some best of shows across the Talk North platform. Some football shows we'll do live, but pretty much everything else we're going to do something a little in advance just so our producers can have a little bit of a break next week. So check that show out. Check out the rest of the shows at talknorth.com, including Randy Shaver's high school football show. And so we'll be talking to you in advance next week, and then we'll resume in January with our usual shows. Thanks to John for all of his good work this year. Thanks again to all of our listeners, and thanks again to Aquarius Home Services and Jody Stay's Pizza Barn in Princeton.